All right, welcome everyone. Here we are at another exciting basics culinary class. My name is Sam Maggi. I'm a culinary mentor and chef with Basics Market. And for this class, we're going to be looking at knife skills, covering a variety of topics, all knife related. We'll be looking at handling the knife, how to choose a good knife for yourself, and what and some cuts, use some classic cuts and things like that. And also, we're going to be making a dish with some of the stuff I'm cutting up because I'm going to be cutting up all kinds of things, and we're going to make that useful. So also, we're going to get into a little bit of boning. So we'll be cutting a lot of vegetables. Um, and then I'm going to get into boning a chicken a little bit because we can learn a lot about just getting bones out of all kinds of critters by looking at the chicken. So let's see, please ask questions as we go along. This is a live class and you're all here with me in real time, and any questions you have or comments, go ahead and give it to us and we will answer them as best we are able. And let's keep a dialogue going. All right, so let's get started. So as you can see before me, I have some knives, and these, excepting this one, this is a scimitar, and this is used really for just butchering large pieces of meat or cutting through large pieces of meat. It's really good to get through that without sticking in there. But I just brought this one out kind of for fun. I carry it around. I don't use it a whole lot, but once in a while. So for your home use and just for general use, culinary use, we have these 4 basic knives. We have a paring knife, and this is good for small cuts and cleaning vegetables and getting into little nooks and crannies, stuff like that. A good boning knife or fillet knife is great for just that, boning or filleting fish. This knife has a little bit of a flexible blade to get it, again, to get around bones and things like that, and it has a very sharp tip. A serrated knife is good, of course, for cutting bread, and also really great for cutting soft vegetables like a nice ripe tomato. This is an ideal sort of blade for that. And it looks like we have a question. Yes.
Sam, Jody was asking what brand of knives you're using tonight.
Oh, all right. Jody's asking what brand of knives I have here tonight. And these are our Wusthof knives. And these are just the knives that we brought in for our culinary classes. But Wusthof is a really great brand, and you can find blades at all kinds of price points with Wusthof, and it's a quality blade, so it's worth looking into. Wusthof, it's a German company, and these have sort of a rubbery handle, which is nice for easy cleaning. So this is the only knife you need, and this is a chef's knife. This is an 8-inch blade. 8 to 10 inches is pretty common. They can go up to like 14 inches. But I like an 8-inch blade. It's the most versatile for me. And you can pretty much do everything with this. So if nothing else, get yourself an 8-inch or 10-inch chef's knife, and you'll notice the shape. It goes from a sharp tip and then tapers into a wider body for chopping and slicing and that kind of stuff. So these are our 4 knives that you most commonly use, and really this is the one that you really need. Now, as far as care goes, I would like to go over some sharpening real quick. Just the serrated blade, you need to have a special tool to sharpen. But all these other knives, we can sharpen with a whetstone. And this is a real handy thing to have. These aren't terribly, they're not expensive at all. And it's a rock, a stone, with two, this is a double-sided one. So we have a rougher side and then a side that's a little smoother for finishing. And I've just been soaking it in water. You want to soak it in water for about 15 minutes at least before you use it. And this is a great way just to keep your knives sharp at home. So whetstone is W-H-E-T, wet, and that comes from this action of sharpening the blade was called wetting the blade, and also it's wet from the water. And while you're using the whetstone, you can add a little more water as you go. So with this, you want to go back and forth on even strokes, and your pinky is a good guide for getting sort of a 20% angle, and that's where you want to be, about just where your pinky will keep the blade up. And just do the same number of strokes on either side of the knife. And then to finish, you go to the smoother side and just finish it up. So that's all there is to it. And of course, if you have a really dull blade, this blade's already sharp, but you know, you do that more. And go ahead and look into a whetstone if you're interested. And then just for your daily honing, you want to use a steel. Yes, we have a question.
Sonia was asking how often you should sharpen your knives.
Sonia is asking how often you should sharpen your knives, and you should sharpen them as soon as they're, you know, not cutting well for you. So a knife blade is, if you're looking at it under a microscope, you have all these little hairs basically, like that they're going to, when the blade is sharp, they're lined up. But as you use it, they're going to kind of go off kilter, and that's when a knife becomes dull. Okay, and so when we're sharpening, we're just kind of realigning all those hairs, so to speak. So just, you know, it depends how often you use your knife, what you're using them for. To help keep your knife sharp, you never want to put it in the dishwasher, your chef knives. You want to clean them by hand, just with some hot soapy water. The dishwasher, there's a couple reasons. Dishwasher will, the detergent in the dishwasher can wreck your blade. Sitting in the dishwasher, steam and so forth can cause rust with some types of metals that are used for knife blades. Also, just all that banging around, any banging around, like leaving your knife in the sink, this sort of thing, all that stuff will dull your blade. Here's another, this is a good way just for a quick honing, realigning those knife blade hairs. You just run it down your steel. Again, you're looking for that 20-degree angle or so. And this is a good way just to keep your knives sharp. And of course, you can always take your knives into a professional knife sharpener and have them sharpen your knives once in a while. And then at home, you know, keep them tuned up, honed up with a steel. So that's a couple maintenance deals. Now let's look at some cuts. So I've got a variety of veggies and stuff here. So my plan with this class is that we're going to make some chicken ballantine. And a ballantine simply means a ball. And a chicken ballantine can be anything from a whole chicken to the hindquarters, which I'm going to be using today. And it's where you're simply making a ball around some filling. So as I cut things, I'm going to be throwing them into this hot pan. and we're going to look at, I'm going to be putting all kinds of cuts in here, and we're going to build a little filling, and then we'll stuff some chicken if everything goes according to plan, right? So let's go ahead and start with an onion. So onion is all, people are often curious about, you know, the proper technique with an onion. Now, as I am cutting, I'm going to talk a little bit about hand positioning, because your knife hand is one thing, and then your claw hand, your other hand, is also very important. And it's just like playing guitar, right? Your rhythm hand and your fingering hand are both important, and in different ways, but and you want to keep them both intact. You want all your fingers to remain attached, right? So an onion, well, the first thing to do is to cut off the top end. And with any of the vegetables, in anything for that matter, that you're cutting, you really want to look for to create a flat surface to start, right? So here I've cut a flat surface, and now I'm going to go ahead and go right through the middle of the root end, and you can see the root end's got the little fuzzies. And then what you have is half an onion that's really easy to peel, and this peel pops right off. And you want to leave the root attached. And what that is going to do is going to hold everything together. So notice how I'm holding this blade. I have my thumb and forefinger right here at the top end of my handle. And then I'm going to wrap from my middle finger down. I'm going to rest that on the handle of the knife, okay? So this is your most efficient way to cut, and also you'll have the most control. So really, you don't want to do any of this stuff with your finger on top. You don't want to hold your knife by just the handle, because then it's really wobbly and out of control. So you're really cutting the handle is really just kind of for balance, and you're holding the knife between your fingers on the blade, and it might feel a little weird if you're not doing this already, but you do get used to it, and you'll find it's really it will give you the most control. Now with the onion, you have all these lines running this way, right? And we're just going to follow those lines. And I find just with cutting all kinds of stuff, really you can learn a lot just from observing how something is made, and it'll show you how it will break down the easiest often. So the path of least resistance, right, with your blade. So I've cut like this. Now, if I were just doing some julienne, so here I've made kind of a labeling device with some of your basic, most common cuts, which you'll see in recipes over and over. And so these are the cuts that you really need to know and learn and become familiar with to follow all kinds of recipes. So let's do a julienne. So I just did that by cutting along those lines, and you kind of have an instant julienne, which is just a strip, basically. So let's go ahead and we'll put those guys on the julienne pile. We'll do some more julienne with some carrots or something like that. And then this onion, I'm going to use, this half an onion I'll use in our stuffing. So the stuffing, I'm just going to put a bunch of veggies. I've got some bread today. Rice is really good for this kind of stuffing. But we'll start with this half an onion. Now notice this hand, my left hand, is the claw. We call this the claw. And you want to keep your fingers in tight. And you want to keep your thumb and your pinky back behind these three fingers so that they're not hanging out loose. And, you run into some painful problems if you cut your finger. So we cut along the lines there. And now for a dice, I'm kind of go for a smallish dice. I'm just cutting across. And it just falls, the onion just falls right apart for us. And I'm going to go ahead and put this into pan. I've got a little bit of oil. I've got some olive oil here. And we'll just get that sizzling. All right. Next, let's throw some garlic in there. Garlic, you can just give it a whack down. It's nice if you think of it, and I often show soaking a garlic clove in a little bit of water for a few minutes, and it's a lot less sticky to work with that way. But for this class, I thought we'd just get right into it. And so with a nice big garlic like this, you can kind of do the same deal as with the onion and cut lengthwise and then across. And let's look at what is called a mince. So a mince is where you're going to cut your garlic or whatever it is down, and then you're going to run your knife back and forth across it. So this is a great technique for ginger, for garlic, for herbs, where you're just trying to get it cut up, chopped up, minced up to a small size. And the smaller you get it, the more it's going to spread throughout your dish, and you'll get that flavor everywhere, which is what you're looking for with something like a garlic or ginger, something like that. So here we've got a nice mince, and you just want to run that knife back and forth as much as you like, and that'll mince up your material. And then just carefully knocking it off my blade. Now, you can always gather the stuff back together on the cutting board, and I always use the back end of my knife blade, the back end, because if I go like this a lot, I'm going to be messing with those hairs, right? And dulling my knife. So by using the back end, there's a couple advantages. One, it's usually flat, and so it's you get everything up, and also you're not dulling your knife blade. So there's that. So let's go ahead and throw that garlic into our pot or skillet. So now we've got garlic and we've got onion, and I need to take a spoon to move that stuff around. Here we go. There's always the one thing that I forget. Let's hope that was it, right? Okay. So garlic, onion, and so let's have a look at let's slice some stuff. So here's a carrot, and I peeled this carrot. So let's say I want to do a bias cut, right? So a bias, that's where you kind of go at an angle, like a 45-degree angle. And again, you're just going to grip and cut across. Now, another cut you can do with a carrot like this is the roll cut or the oblique cut. So from here, I cut a piece off at a bias. Now I can cut flat or straight across, cut again, roll, cut, roll, cut, and then you get the oblique. And this is a really nice cut, like for stews or just for some steamed carrots or something like that. It eats really nice. It's pretty to look at. Now, with any of your cuts, when you're making a dish, you kind of want to think about the size of the cut and the material of the vegetable and how quickly it's going to cook. So you want things to cook. You want things to come together at the same time. So you usually start with the onions and the garlic, and you'll saute those up till they become a little bit soft. Then you'll add the thing that's going to take the next longest to cook. And in this case, I think it's the carrot, because I am going to add some, let's add some carrots and some celery. It looks like we might have a question, yes.
Robin asked if you could show that roll again.
Oh yeah, okay, Robin wants to see the roll again, and I'll do that with another carrot. So here's the thing too with carrots, or something like a carrot, like say a zucchini, you can make a little flat surface like that. I just took a little bit off. And then you have a nice solid base to work off of. And from here, and again, you can see my claw action. I'm going to go ahead and cut. And here's a cut unto itself, right? And then I can stack a couple or three if I'm comfortable. And from here, I could make some more julienne, right? Like a finer julienne. This would be considered like a fine julienne there. And then with that julienne, I can cut across. And again, the claw is a great way to sort of keep your material together. Now, one thing to think about too, when you're cutting, you can see how I have my knuckles right up against the blade. And really the closer in, like if you're touching that blade, it's actually safer than having your hand kind of out and about, because you know exactly where your fingers are, and my fingers are curled, and I'm using them as a guide as I cut. So there we go with some of this, and notice how I am rocking. So this is the motion you want. You don't want to be doing this. You want to be doing the rocking motion. And this is how you're going to get your best cut all the way through stuff. It's just rocking, and you almost want to just keep that tip of your blade on the cutting board as you cut. All right, so we got some carrot in there. Oh, let's do this. Boy, see, I'm trying not to turn this into a recipe class. I really am, but I can't help but cook something with all these nice veggies. Yeah, we have that question.
Leanne was asking if left-handed knives are valid or if knives are pretty much universal.
Wow, the question is are left-handed knives a thing? And this is from Leanne. Yeah, I mean, knives, you can just, they're universal. You can use a left or right, in your left or right hand, and then you just switch it out. See, right away, that's tricky for me with my left hand. But yeah, okay, so let's look at that roll cut once again. So for the roll cut, you go cut at a bias, give it a roll, cut it straight across, cut it at a bias, give it a roll, and then straight across, and then you've got your oblique or roll cut. Now, let's go ahead. What else should we put in this? Next, mushrooms. So mushrooms take a little bit to cook, so they're always a good thing to kind of, celery first. So between the celery, the carrot, and the onion, what's that called? It's called a mirepoix. So that's your base for so many dishes. And here we have a little garlic as well, but the mirepoix, your celery, your onion, and your carrot are the basis for all kinds of sauces, soups, etc. So let's make, and we'll also often be using kind of a small dice for the mirepoix. So another trick to getting into vegetables easily is to cut them down so that they're kind of shorter than your knife blade. And then this allows you to do that rocking motion through it. So with the celery, again, first I'm going to follow the natural lines that I see in the celery, which is lengthwise. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut across, again, using the rocking motion. Now we'll go ahead, we'll introduce the celery. I want to keep this skillet lubricated, a little more olive oil. Okay. So now how about that mushroom? So mushrooms are really fun because they're so soft, you know, and so it doesn't take a lot of effort with your knife. And here's another thing, you never want to be putting a lot of pressure on the blade of your knife. Too much pressure means maybe your knife needs sharpening. But you're more likely to hurt yourself if you do slip and somehow the knife comes in contact with your body. If you're applying a lot of pressure, that's going to hurt. If you're going light, so you want to kind of keep a light grip. I never am gripping the knife too hard. It's always got kind of this wiggly feel to it, because if I do come in contact with myself, I can just abort and no harm done, hopefully. So the mushroom's cool because so I start by making that flat surface. And with the mushroom, I do kind of do a chop instead of a roll, just because I want to get that motion of, get some speed going with the mushroom. Again, you want to tuck your fingers into the claw, but you can really kind of go fast, right? I mean, you don't have to. And yeah, please don't go fast if you don't. Well, you never really need to, right? We want to keep in control. The thing with the knife is you should have the same technique, whether you're going fast or going slow, and you'll always be safe. Now, let's go ahead and mince the mushrooms up a little bit because we're doing a stuffing. So I have the slice, and now I'm going to go ahead and employ the mincing technique and just run that sort of half circle back and forth, then gather my mushroom together and pop that in the skillet. Boy, this filling is sort of coming together. So at this point, when I'm doing something like this, I start to season the tad. So I've got a little bit of kosher salt. Kosher salt is the best salt to cook with because molecularly it dissolves quicker, so you can really taste the sodium a little faster. And so you tend not to over salt. And we can go ahead and add a little pinch of pepper while we're at it. And yeah, good. Okay, so that's kind of moving. Let's see, how about how to get into a bell pepper? So there's a few ways to approach a bell pepper. One is you can kind of go around like this and pull off quarters. I'll show you this technique that I think is pretty neat, where we're going to go ahead and top it, and then also take the bottom off, and you can use all this stuff. Okay, so that's pretty cool. And from here, you know, this is great for like this sort of thing where you're doing a stuffing. We can cut across and pop that stuff in our stuffing. Now, but here's the fun part of this, is now you've got this deal, and you can cut right down along one of those ribs, and then just run your knife along, roll out your pepper, and I like to call this the rolling out of the red carpet, right? And then you have these pieces to work with. So from here, we can make some really nice, do some julienne, and we can do some small dice, or let's get really small. So if you go a little, so dice is just that, it's the shape of a dice, right? It's a cube. But if you go really small, it's called Brunoise. And a Brunoise is often used like for a garnish, or in a stuffing or something like this. It's not a bad idea to have a little Brunoise So for Grenois, I'll go like with a really fine julienne. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut across. And this would be Renoir. And so I'm going to put that on my Renoir spot. Yes, we have a question.
And we have two questions about salt. One is, could you repeat the name of the salt you're using? And the other question
Yeah.
was, is the kosher salt you're using large grain or flakes?
Oh, okay. So the question are, we have some questions about the salt. And I'm using a kosher salt. And so kosher salt has been cooked, it's been baked, and that just kind of opens it up. It opens up the structure of the salt, and that's why it dissolves quicker. Otherwise, the salt crystals are pretty knit tightly, and they take longer to dissolve. I am just using a diamond crystal kosher salt, which is my preference for kosher salt. And yeah, it is not a flake salt. And yeah, any kosher salt, well, it'll be kind of a larger granule. Okay, so where are we here? Oh, let's look at, for practicing knife skills, potatoes are really a great thing. Well, this is kind of sizzling away a little bit. Let's look at something that's called a bâtonnet. And a bâtonnet is a cut that's sort of like French fry cut, right? But with the potato, again, you can make yourself a bit of a flat surface to work off by just shaving a little piece off, and then you have something much more stable. Speaking of stability, your cutting board is really important to keep stable. So underneath this cutting board, I have a this board made, it's called, and this is really a nice, fancy like thing to keep your cutting board in place. A Silpat mat, which you use for baking, works the same. And those are really good if you have one of those, or just a wet dish towel, or even a wet paper towel under your cutting board, because you really don't want the cutting board to slip around, okay? All right, so for the bâtonnet, we can go ahead and we'll cut the potato in half, and then we can cut some lengths. And then from here, just cut those into lengths. And to really get, if you want to get technical about it, which I'm not going to be, not going to be too technical, but basically a bâtonnet is something like this. And these are fun because it is like a French fry, and also you can kind of build, like put the potatoes on a plate on a dish, and it kind of looks cool. You could square these off. A lot of the classic French cuts, you're squaring a lot of stuff off, and you end up with a lot of scraps. And then in a French kitchen, or any kitchen, but a French kitchen in particular, with these really specific cuts, and you have these excess vegetable scraps, that's where you make your soups with that kind of stuff. All right. So a potato, of course, is really a great medium for some dice. So let's go ahead and do medium dice. So there's some dice. That's some good dice there. Now, let us, what we need in this stuffing is a little bit of acid. So let's look at a lemon. Let's check out the paring knife. So one fun thing to do with citrus, like say I was going to present a lemon on a fish or something. I'm just doing kind of a zigzag. with the paring knife. And you get this kind of effect. And this looks pretty cool, right? Like a flower or something like that. So that's something you can do with a paring knife. And here I'm just going to add a little lemon or a little bit of acid on in our stuffing. Okay. All right. Gotta get a move on, right? So, oh, another cool thing. Let's go ahead and let's get some nice, maybe a little bit of more, how about a small dice with this broccoli? So broccoli's neat because actually the stem of the broccoli, the stalk, is very edible and very delicious. And to get into the stalk, you just take it off, and then you can square it off. And this also gets the tough skin off. And then you've got like this cool cube to work with, or what is it, a rectangle. And then you can take that rectangle, and then we can create some nice small dice. And I'm going to put that into our stuffing. And then, yeah, we have a question. Yes.
First question is, what's the difference between brunoise and dice?
Brunoise, the question is, what's the difference between brunoise and dice? And really, it's just the size. When you get into like really tiny, fine dice, it's called a brunoise. So we have like large dice, medium dice, then small dice. And then you have your brunoise, and then sometimes it's even broken down into a fine brunoise, which is really tiny, tiny. But I think really brunoise kind of covers that small dice and even the fine brunoise. So with with the broccoli, you just want to get in there, and this is kind of the same with cauliflower as well. You get in there and you just kind of start popping off pieces of the broccoli. And again, you can see how much control I have just because I'm really just holding the knife blade. The handle is almost there just as a balance for the blade. And that's a way that helps me think about, that's how I think about it. Yeah, we have another question.
Pamela was asking what the acidity does for this recipe.
Oh, okay. Pamela is asking about the acidity of the lemon in the stuffing here. And so acid, what acid does is sort of wakes up the dish, and it really allows you to, it's like a counterpoint to the other flavors where you have the salt, the sodium, you might have a little bit of heat from the pepper. You'll have all this savory flavor. I'm going to add in more herbs. So when you add the acid, it just sort of wakes up your palate. It's kind of a balance to the more, I don't want to say like earthier tones or something, but it's sort of a counterpoint in it, and in your palate, it just kind of perks things up. And so you often, you want to add a little vinegar or a little lemon juice to a dish, or lime juice, depending where your dish is going, will dictate the acid you add. But you'll often see in most dishes a splash of acid, and it's to kind of wake up your palate. All right. So what else oh yeah. So let's do that with the zook. A similar sort of deal here where we can cut it down to size a bit, and then you can make your stability spot, and then we can cut it thusly, and we could get some. I was going to make small dice, and we'll add some of this. So small dice is something like this. I mean, and it's all relative again to the dish you're making. Cutting things uniformly generally will make it easier to eat and stick in your mouth, and knives are the knife, it's one of our most ancient tools. The first knife discovered, it coincides with like the first humans about 2.5 million years ago, and it's like a sharpened rock. But it was one of our earliest tools, and anything from obsidian, anything that could kind of be sharpened. And you can imagine what a game changer that was, like for early people, and how they could break things down and eat them easier, and work with materials to make stuff. So knives have been with us forever, in one form or another. Yes, we have another question.
Leanne was asking if you had another lemon to possibly demonstrate that technique again.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I only brought the one lemon. Leanne's asking if I could do the technique again with the lemon. I could kind of fake it. I could reanimate this lemon. So here I have a lemon. And the technique, really, I almost brought an orange because I thought that'd be cool to do it on a larger scale as well. But really, you're just kind of cutting zigzags like Charlie Brown's shirt, the zigzag pattern. And you just want to keep moving around, cutting that zigzag. And by the time you go all the way around, your zigzags will line up, and then you have this sort of deal. And it is really pretty on a plate or in the middle of your, platter or something. I like doing that. That's fun. Okay, so let's get some. We're getting there. Now, as I mentioned, like with the stuffing, some cooked rice would be good in there. But what I have on hand today is a little bit of stale bread. So, let's use a bread knife. Why not? So I'm going to use my serrated blade because that works the best for bread. And I'm going to cut a bit of dice. And the bread is going to just kind of bind everything together. And this is just a little bit of stale bread I found laying around. And I thought, let's put that in the stuffing. Why not? But yeah, rice would be good here. Wild rice would be really good. Something like that. But I'm just kind of looking for some filler, some binder, some, that sort of thing. Okay, so we'll continue to sizzle away there, and better get to that chicken, right? Boy, I always run out of time on these knife skills class. One real quick thing I did want to show before we get everything gooped up with chicken. An apple, this is just a fun cut I like to show with an apple. So here's how I like to core an apple. Again, I get a flat surface, and I'm just going to run the knife around the core. And then you get your core out. And then from here, we can do some thin slices. And sometimes, it's okay to put your fingers on either side of something like this. And I'm doing this because I want to kind of keep this apple together with its juices. And if you get a good juicy apple and you slice it sort of, well, let's do that again. It is a delicious apple. So what I'm doing is I'm just running, and it's a garlicky apple. I'm slicing it right where I cut that garlic. Woo! But you can see you get this cool like fan deal, and it's fairly sturdy. So like you can, I'm putting it on the mince, but obviously this isn't a mince, but it's a cool little fan. And that again, like between that and that, you've kind of got some pretty stuff. Ooh, one more pretty thing. And then we'll get to the chicken. So a mushroom. Here's another thing to do with a paring knife. You can go like this, and I'm just kind of making some spiral here. And you see this at steakhouses, or when you order steak out, sometimes they'll do a mushroom like this, called a turned mushroom. And I am, a little out of practice on it, but you get the idea. It's kind of a cool, like, spiral design. And then you can throw this in a skillet or something like that and kind of, and of course the paring knife is good for taking off stems and stuff like that. So that's kind of fun, right? A pinwheel. So here you go. And then chopped, we have, chopped is just chopped. So here's the rest of the scarlet apple. I'm just going to chop that up and put it there for fun. Now, let's go ahead and look at, I want to finish this, I want to finish up.
What temperature are you picking out?
I have this, the question is what temperature is the skillet on? And it's just on medium heat. In medium to medium high, I just threw a couple pieces of apple in there because, why not? And I have some beautiful fresh chives from out in our little herb garden outside. And so here we go with just sort of, with chives, you can do a really nice, like, kind of fine chop across. And again, employing the claw, and you just want to move that down the line there. And I could even go in close like that, right? Throw those chives in. Let me show you a chiffonade cut real quick. So here's some leaf. So chiffonade you want to use with like leafy stuff, like a leaf. Here is some sage leaves, and you roll them up really tight and then slice across. And this is what is called a chiffonade, and this is great for a garnish. Or here, I'm just going to go ahead and put these chiffonade sage leaves into our stuffing. And I think it'll be kind of cool. Yeah, so there's some chiffonade. And of course, you could chiffonade something like a kale. So kale, you can just pull the green off the stem, roll it up, and chiffonade. This is a great technique for basil. You want to just like sprinkle some chiffonade basil on your pasta or something like that. So we're going to put a little bit of kale in there too, just for some different colors. So it's really pretty, right? And it's looking like a stuffing. All right, without further ado, let's get into that chicken. Got a couple minutes left. This is why we always say, well, we're going to do another knife skills class because it's hard to cover everything. Knife skills, you're never going to stop learning. It's just ongoing. It's something you just want to practice and practice good techniques, and you'll just keep getting better. And but it's really a lifelong commitment to just using your knife. Let's get some parsley in there. So with parsley, here I've got a bunch of Italian parsley. This is a neat way to get into the parsley. You can shave it with your sharp chef's knife. You can just shave the leaves off, right off the stem, and they'll come right off. And then we're going to do our chopping technique. Mincing, right? This is the mince. And again, the back of my blade, we're gathering. And we're going to throw this parsley right in our stuffing. Boy, that looks like a regular old stuffing, huh? Okay, the chicken. So here I have a chicken, and I'm going to bring in on this plastic board so I can sterilize it. So when working with chicken, and I am going to put gloves on just because I don't really have a great place to wash my hands right here. So I don't want to get chicken juice all over everything. Chicken is you don't want to get the juice on all your surfaces in the kitchen. So it's nowadays they recommend you don't rinse your chicken. You just want to kind of, get it out of the bag, what have you, if it's in a bag, and get it out of its juices. You can pat it dry with a paper towel, but yeah, you don't want to rinse it because the rinsing actually spreads that possibility of salmonella all over your kitchen and sinks and stuff. So don't rinse it, and we'll be good. Okay, so what I want is the hind quarter. So I'm looking at the thigh and the leg. So on our website, basicsmarket.com, we have all kinds of, these classes are recorded and posted, but then also I do some just some skill stuff like how to break down a chicken. So if you want to see how to get into the whole chicken, go ahead and go to that to the basicsmarket.com, and you can learn how to cut up a whole chicken. I'm just taking the hindquarters now. So here's where our boning knife comes in handy. You can do all this just with a chef's knife, and it's a great way. And sometimes I prefer the chef's knife because you can really get in there and get some leverage because it's got that the wide blade. But what I'm going to do first with this guy is you want to get through the skin. And so once you get through that skin, you can really work it and work that leg, and you're kind of like a chiropractor at this point, and you want to feel it pop. And I'm popping the leg joint right out of the body here, and you can see this leg joint popped out. And then you want to run your knife around that joint, and what you're going to find is no resistance, and then you're in the right spot. And again, that comes down to that point I was making. You want to look at it. You could break down any animal you want if you just follow the bone structure. If you're sawing through a bone, you're in the wrong place. But everything has these, I have joints right, around, and so you can dismember any creature you like, just following those simple rules. And so for this, we're going to go ahead and find there's another spot in between the drumstick and the thigh, and usually it's designated by you can follow, there's like a little bit of white material, and so you find that, and then just kind of again find that joint, and don't be afraid to kind of chiropractor, I call it, where you just sort of pop in, and if you're cutting against bone, you want to refigure your spot, and there's that ball joint. So what chickens have and other creatures is that ball joint, and so you want to work around those ball joints. Now we can go ahead and stuff these things, and then we'll have our ballotine. So the thigh, you can feel this bone, it's like that from there to there. So you want to run your knife, and this is where the boning knife comes in really handy because it has that flexible blade. So we can run our knife right under that bone, and you're just going to kind of roll it out, roll the bone out, and you want to cut under it and around it and save as much meat as you can. So that's a chicken thigh, bone-in chicken thigh. Really good, inexpensive cut of meat, right? But we're going to make it real fancy, and I want to leave the skin on for this. Okay, so there's one thing we can roll up into a ballotine. So now we have a boneless chicken thigh. Okay, now here's the leg. Now usually the bone will be up towards one side more than the other. So here's the drumstick, and I just want to again cut down to the bone, exposing it. Right, I've exposed it, and then there's a little tendon here that you can take out, anything that's kind of stringy, tendony, just remove it. But really, it's just that one piece. And again, you're just going to go around both sides and then under. And get all the meat you can. Okay. Clean it clean. Bone. And of course, the bones will make lovely, nothing should go to waste. You can make beautiful soup stock with those bones. If you roast the bones, you'll get a deeper color and a different, more of a roasty flavor. If you don't roast the bones and just throw them in some water and simmer them, you'll get a nice clear light chicken broth. So sometimes there's a little remainder there where I kind of missed the bone a little bit, and I'm just cleaning that up. Okay, so here now look, we have almost, so once you lay the thigh and the drumstick out, they're almost identical, right? Kind of cool. And I've got my stuffing, and it is a little warm to work with, but that's okay. So we put our stuffing into on top of the chicken, and then we roll it into a neat little package, okay, into a ball, and then you have your ballotine. Now here is where you could, so I've got this is a sheet pan, and I just put this down on the sheet pan, and ideally, I just don't have one on me, but if you have a skewer, and maybe just if you're doing this project, get some bamboo skewers, and you just pop that skewer right there, and that'll hold everything in place. Probably you'd be okay also just cooking this with the filling in there and the seam side down. It will, once it starts cooking, it's going to firm up, and you probably be okay, but it's not a bad idea to use the skewer. Let's go ahead and stuff our, this is the leg. And again, we're ballotine. Another great stuffing, like a real quick one, or to add to your cut vegetables, because you want to practice cutting up your vegetables to make the stuffing, right, is a little bit of sausage, chicken, turkey, or pork sausage even. Add some nice flavor and will help with the binding of all your nice veggies and herbs and all that together. All right, well, I'm out of time. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I really enjoyed this class. I enjoyed doing all these classes, but something like this, I feel is just a skill that you're going to keep using and apply to all kinds of situations. You can email us questions anytime. Please visit our website, basicsmarket.com. There's tons of great recipes on there, more videos, more stuff on cutting up vegetables, and some of the stuff we covered tonight, plus other things. Come to some more classes. We have porchetta coming up next week, and a beautiful traditional Italian pork dish. Then we're going to keep with that Italian theme, and I'm going to show you how to make your own gnocchi, which is in 2 kinds of gnocchi. So that's really fun. And then we have crepes, and then we have some talk about eggs. So keep coming back to these classes. Enjoy your rest of your time, and happy cooking.